We're a unique podcast for families of faith, produced by parents and pastors who understand and appreciate how hard it is to maintain your faith in a hostile culture. We're here to encourage and support you in the most vital role of all, parenting. If you're feeling overwhelmed and afraid, it's okay. You're not alone. Brilliantly Brave is hosted by two honest and engaging dads with 9 kids between them. A road tripper, author, and pastor, Father Brad Matthias, and iShine founder, solo parenting expert, and all-around foodie, Mr. Robert Beeson. Join us each week as we explore and engage with some of the most intriguing, inspiring, outrageous, and awesome parents in the world. This is Brilliantly Brave.
Welcome to Brilliantly Brave Parenting. I'm one of your hosts, Pastor Brad Matthias, and we are recording in Franklin, Tennessee, and I get the honor of introducing my co-host today, Robert Beeson.
Hey there. This is fun. I love doing this.
Yeah, so we're doing 2 special podcasts that are Get to Know the Host podcasts. These are sort of set aside, not part of the weekly releases. We just wanted to give insight into the stories and the testimony behind the 2 guys that are hosting Brilliantly Brave. And so I did mine. Robert interviewed me, and it's my turn to interview him. And I think Robert's story is quite profound and unusual. A lot of people get into Christian ministries and doing Christian things, usually through the church or through pastoral ministry or some sort of established process. Robert is one of those guys who didn't do it the way everybody else did. Robert came into ministry from a completely different path, and it started in South Africa. So I want to introduce Robert that way and really give our audience just a sense of the diversity of your background.
Well, yeah, definitely doing things differently is kind of the premise. But I was born in Hollywood, California. I moved to South Africa when I was 6 years old, schooled there until I was 16, came back to California, and came back my senior year in high school. And you can imagine what a train wreck that was after having been out of the country for, all those years. And then trying to find my way.
Wait. No. I got to interrupt. It's not just that you were out of the country that long. You were a missionary kid.
I was a missionary kid. Yeah. So you're a missionary kid that's living out of the country and you just have no concept of you know what? I'll take that back. I had a vague idea of what was happening in America because halfway through that 10 years in South Africa, we came back for 1 year and we had furlough. Actually, it wasn't for a full year. I think it was like 8 or 9 months. And in that time, I did go to school. And so when I went back to South Africa after the 6th grade furlough, I kind of burnt into my memory what American culture was like. And so when I came back my senior year, I was prepared to get into my senior year thinking the same thing about American culture that I did in 6th grade. So I showed up for my first day in my senior class with bell-bottoms, velour shirts, and a Dukes of Hazzard lunchbox because that's what was cool in 6th grade. They didn't tell me the culture changed between 6th grade and 12th grade. So yeah, that was quite the head turn.
And you've told me that story several times, so I know it left a mark.
Yeah. It did leave a mark. It did. But you know what? I think the thing that it really helped build in me is the adaptability. Like I think missionary kids, especially because they have to go back and forth and they don't really belong in a culture necessarily. They're just kind of always adapting to the culture. I think it gives a unique perspective living in a culture because you're not native to it. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's actually really helped me in my life.
That's interesting. Yeah. So, you come back from really being raised in South Africa, son of Christian parents on the mission field, and you come back to America at a very sensitive time in your development, and it leads you into the music business. Tell them how you got to Nashville. How did that happen?
Well, I got right out of high school. I started college and got a job to pay for college in advertising and marketing. And I worked my way up through the marketing company very quickly. It was a fairly small marketing company. And, a year and a half into it, I was interviewing people for positions under me that had degrees in marketing. And I'm like, why am I going to school? Like I've already got the job that I want. So I dropped out of school and just went full time into, marketing. And I was involved in music. So I was in a Christian band in Southern California. So I had a lot of friends in the Christian circles out there. And so I started I started my own marketing firm. And that turned into a T-shirt printing firm for labels and bands that were touring, and among other clients. And that kind of grew, and I got asked to do some marketing for a larger marketing company in Seattle. And we focused on promoting things to MTV and different radio stations, building street teams. That turned into helping launch a label for Maranatha Music. This was all completely not orchestrated by me. And then, what happened is when we got involved with Maranatha Music, we really retooled our entire business to just focus on, because it's sexier being in the music business than printing T-shirts, So it's like, okay, this is what I want to do. This looks cooler.
Yeah.
And it's not quite as labor intensive as far as manual labor. So I basically, in my just naive state, said, okay, well, let's drop some of these other accounts. And, we had a chemical company that we worked for that created grout, and we had a radio station and whatever. Those were, and real estate people, that was not the priority. So we moved our marketing company to just focus on music. And when Maranatha decided, we don't want to do this music label anymore, I was left without the clients that I had. I had a staff, and I just went upside down. And so everything that I've been working towards, that I thought I was working towards, just collapsed. And so I thought, well, I've just spent the last year developing a business plan for starting a label. I'm just going to take that same plan, the same ideas, and the same relationships, and I'm just going to start a label. I don't know what else to do. So I started a label and got distribution back in Nashville, and then got bought by the company that's distributing me, and they moved me back to Nashville to run the company that I started in California. Right.
And so for our audience, Seattle is one of those sort of hubs of creativity, and definitely some significant music in the last 30 years has come out of Seattle. Robert, I think the first band you really developed and signed was a little-known band known as Jars of Clay. Is that right?
That's true. That's one of the first artists that we released on the label.
Yeah, so for our audience, if you're not familiar with Jars of Clay, just Google it. Very big band, arguably one of the biggest bands ever in Christian music. You quickly established a reputation for being able to pick bands, to spot talent, to direct the development of different artists here in Nashville. And you ended up being a senior type vice president at Provident Music Group. Is that right?
That's true. Yeah, I had a great career there, and got to work with a lot of outstanding artists, and that went beyond Essential, which was the label that I started, and Providence started growing, and so I took over senior vice president of A&R for all the labels under Provident for some years, and that grew the roster of people I was able to work with, and some of the people that I kind of looked up to, like Michael W. Smith was someone that I'd known about for a long time, and was a fan of his ministry and his authenticity, and so I got a chance to, once I was put into the senior vice president role, to start working with him and developing his music. And then Casting Crowns came along, which was different because the original vision for Essential was more alternative rock youth music. And then when I took over the reins of multiple labels, I had to kind of branch out, and while I was there, we signed Casting Crowns, and that was very different than Jars of Clay, but it stretched me,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was an awesome career and great time professionally.
Right. So in the middle of all that, the heyday of Christian music, you were at the top of the top. You were dealing with the Third Days and the Casting Crowns, the Michael W. Smith, the Jars of Clay. You were in many ways one of the more successful and influential guys in Nashville, and that's really well known within the industry. And then right in the middle of that moment, some things changed in your personal life that led to a real crisis of faith. Share with our audience just quickly about that, because I think it's fundamental to why you're here today.
Yeah, I said, it was a great time of my life professionally. I said that on purpose because personally, I was bankrupt, and not financially, but I had, as sometimes happens in any industry, when success comes quickly, you start chasing that, and it starts becoming your identity, and you start believing things about yourself based on the performance that you give. and I neglected the responsibilities at home. What I mean by that is, it wasn't like there was no real moral bankruptcy. I didn't like go off and have affairs or whatever, but I started like living hard during that time. I was drinking way too much. I just, my essential family, my business family became kind of another family, and so I spent a lot of time with them, and which meant that I didn't spend as much time at home. And on the books, on the surface, you would say I had a great life because I had a great family, great kids, but underneath it all, it was just, it was like a powder keg, and it was just building and just waiting for something to ignite.
So at that point in your life, you had 3 daughters.
Yeah.
You had a wife. You were living in the nicest neighborhood in Franklin, Tennessee, in the biggest house on the highest hill, essentially.
Well, yeah, I haven't measured, but it was life was good.
You're right. Yeah. So
by all accounts.
Yeah, you were on top of your game.
That's true.
And in a moment, your life sort of imploded personally.
I decided that my time at Provident was done. I wanted to build again. 3 months after making that announcement, I woke up one morning and my wife of 13 years was gone. And there was no note. There was no call. I just had no idea. We had been having significant problems in our marriage for about 2.5 years. And so I was sleeping upstairs in our guest room. And I came down one morning and the door to her room was open. And it was just, it's one of those moments that life is going to change. I can't describe it, but if anyone listening has been through anything like a divorce, there is this moment where you're going, okay, this is where it gets real. And there's a new normal that just started. And so she left, and she left the 3 girls with me, and she disappeared for a couple weeks. We didn't know where she was. I didn't know if she was, alive or not. And because there was some serious addiction issues with her. And so, you don't know. When you're dealing with addicts, you don't know if anything can happen. But eventually, we found out that she was alive, but she had just made the decision that she was moving out and going on with her life, and it didn't include me or the girls. So I was forced to figure out what it meant to be a single dad at the same time as what am I going to do professionally? So those 2 things, those 2 identity factors, like swam in the same waters during that season. Wow.
So, it was in that sort of turbulence, in that chaos of finding yourself a single dad, 3 young daughters, just adrift.
Yeah.
In the waves of life, if you will. You're in that moment, and you had an experience with God that was profound.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, tell us
about
that.
It was that season of my life, and it was many, many moments. It wasn't just one experience, but I started realizing how much God was in tune with me, even though I wasn't in tune with him. And I started realizing how important and how huge the responsibility of raising my daughters was. And those 2 things meshed together really sat with me for probably 9 months of just, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. My goal was to start another company, a music company, but then being a dad of 3 girls and watching a solo dad, watching how much media they were consuming. It just ignited a passion in me that hasn't gone out since. And that was helping kids understand their true identity. Because the truth is, I was 40 years old. I didn't know my true identity. And so I was forced to kind of start understanding the truth of my identity at the same time as I was trying to help my daughters understand that. And then getting to know other people that had done research on the tween age group. I realized that there's not much that's happening for this age group, and it's largely ignored by the church. In secular settings, it is incredibly important because it's a huge business sector. But within the church, there's not much for this tween age group. And so knowing the research and knowing the opportunity, it was an opportunity for me, and I'm going to say us, as my daughters and I, to launch a ministry called iShine, and that was focused exclusively on ministry to tweens.
Yeah. And that's the part of the story where I met Robert, approximately 2008, 2009. I became a part of the iShine story, and the company that I worked with at that time, Bema Media, based out of Sherman, Texas, became sort of the functional funding partner of the iShine brand and ministry. And that has led to so many things being created over the last decade, from a TV show. 6 seasons now of iShine Connect, which is, I think 9 networks. It's a tween sitcom for Christian kids all over the world. Record label came out of that. Jamie Grace, famous Dove-winning artist.
And there's art, there's actors in Hollywood right now that came through, our doors, and we have books and Bibles and CDs and DVDs and tours, and that's turning into bigger events. And the key factor is that was born in a broken place. Right. All of that came from a broken place.
Right.
And that's where I started to realize that our identity cannot be formed by what we do or our performance. It has to be secured in the place of understanding how much we need a Father, how much we need our God, and then trusting Him to make the path right. I'm a control freak when it comes to control but driven freak. Like, we got to get this done, we got to do this, and I had to release the reins. I mean, there was a number of things that happened to me that forced me to go, I'm not in control of this. I'll do my best, but God, it's up to God to make. And I truly believe that iShine, everything that's happened with iShine, is a direct result of God being faithful, not to me, but faithful in turning. I mean, yes, He's faithful to me, but turning something broken into something impactful. I mean, that's the story of redemption, right? I mean, without death, there can be no resurrection. Right. So at a certain point, you have to die to yourself. And so that's been the key pivotal point for me, is just realizing that I'm not capable of doing this by myself, and I'm not called to be the perfect dad. I'm called to, first of all, understand how much I'm loved by God, and then to hopefully transfer that love or transfer that passion for finding our identity in God to my kids. And
so that the last decade of your life has been sort of this journey that you made largely alone as a solo parent, as a dad, without a wife, and you chose to stay single long after your marriage evaporated, walking through the years of early adolescence and adolescence by yourself. But in the last few years, things have changed for you. I was single for 8 years, and then met someone that was just a perfect partner for me in life, and got married about 2.5 years ago. It's hard to believe it's going to be 3 years this year. And she has 3 boys, and I had 3 girls. So, the Beeson bunch. We call Robert's family the Brady Bunch because it's exactly as the 70s sitcom.
Pretty much, yeah. So it's another adventure, and through all of it, I've just been so blown away that there is a constant that we can count on, that in God's sovereignty, He is trustworthy and faithful to take care of us, and also to take care of our kids. They are His kids first, and that's not lost on me. Being a single parent, a lot of times you feel like you're out of control, and that on a daily basis you're damaging your kids because you don't know the right things to do. And I had to surrender even that and go, I have to trust that, God, these are your kids, and you've said this before, that for some reason you chose me to be their dad. And so I'm going to trust that I'm in the right place and they're in the right place, but knowing the author of both is you. And so you're going to have to help walk us through them.
Yeah, and so for our audience, Robert brings this incredibly helpful insight into the struggles of solo parenting, blended family. And so as we address and respond to these different interviews and ideas on Brilliantly Brave, we're bringing a diversity of viewpoint. It's not just the traditional Christian home that's represented here. This is the viewpoint of a single dad and then a blended family.
Right.
And so I think God has used that to help us identify and connect with a variety of different parents who are experiencing life in a variety of different ways.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the family nowadays is so multifaceted. I mean, it looks so different. And so I think being honest and transparent about what we're going through is going to help our prayer is that it will help other people. Just the first thing is to help them know that they're not alone. There are other people that are going through this, and that they should not feel isolated.
Yeah. Well, I just want to encourage our listeners to support Robert. He has his own sort of sister podcast to Brilliantly Brave. It's known as Solo Parenting. You can find out more information at the Brilliantly Brave website or iShineLive.com. And so, Robert, thank you for agreeing to co-host this show. And I know our audience now knows you. So
it's my honor. I'm so excited to be involved with this.
Yeah. So thank you for tuning in. You have been listening to Brilliantly Brave. Get to know your host. Thanks. God bless.
Parents, remember, even if you may not feel brilliant or brave, you are. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. And I am not ashamed, for I know whom I have believed. I am convinced that he is able to guard until that day what has been entrusted to me. 2 Timothy 1:7-13. This podcast is a service of iShine Ministries and the Tween Gospel Alliance. All rights reserved. Donations to Brilliantly Brave are tax deductible at iShineLive.com. Review and subscribe to this podcast on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, or on our webpage. And read our blog and connect with us at WordPress@BrilliantlyBrave.com. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Brilliantly Brave.
What our kids believe is going to define them for a lifetime. According to George Barna, by the age of 13, what a kid believes is what he'll die believing. For parents and for pastors, that's a frightening experience, especially if you've got an 11 or 12-year-old. At the iShine Ministries headquarters, this became a huge priority in the last year. We partnered with the Tween Gospel Alliance to bring you a brand new resource known as the Shock and Awe Study Guide. And I'm here with one of the co-founders of this entire program, Robert Beeson. Can you tell us, what is the Shock and Awe Study Guide?
It is awesome. More than that? Yeah. Okay. The Shock and Awe Study Guide is a super cool thing that either a parent can do with their kid, or a youth pastor can do with their students, or a children's pastor can do with their students. And here's the cool thing about it. It is apologetics for kids. So it's the really huge evidence and thoughts of apologetics wrapped in a way that is really tangible and simple for kids to understand, answering 4 primary questions. And they are, what if there's a God? What if the Bible is true? What if Jesus is who he said he was? And what if I'm part of that plan? And we believe if you can answer those 4 questions and you are drawn through evidence proving those 4 questions, that really it's gonna establish a pretty unshakable foundation of faith.
That sounds very helpful, especially if you're a parent or pastor and you're concerned about the condition of your child's faith, what they believe, what the voices of culture are telling them. If that's you and you're interested, go to iShineLive.com and check out in our web store the Shock and Awe Study Guide. It has a digital cloud video base, so it's 4 studies in a small paperback volume for $9, and it has 4 videos that go with 4 studies. It can be done in a weekend, it can be done over a month, or it can be done bi-monthly, however you need it. It is a fantastic resource that I have used as a pastor in my own home church, and I have been impressed. So check it out.
Check it out.